Great.
All right, so hey, this is Dave Littman, and I'm bringing you another edition of Extreme NR. And today I am joined by the CTO advisor, aka Keith Townsend, as he's also known by. Keith, welcome.
Thanks a
So,
lot for having
Keith,
me, Dave.
today we are going to talk about, hey, advising CTOs. And let's talk today about hyperconvergence. And if you are a CTO and maybe the CEO has said to you, hey, look, we need we need to start looking at hyperconvergence. We need more efficiency. We need to save money. What would you advise other CTOs who might be watching on what they should look for, what they should ask when surveying the vendor landscape out there for a hyperconverged solution?
So, I love the way you started out the question because I think this is where a lot of CTOs fall into a little bit of the architecture where, it's marketing architecture of technologies. When we start to peel back the onion of what is ACI and hyperconverged infrastructure and what are the kind of main selling points or the main values from a enterprise perspective beyond the vendor speak. And one of the things that I really like to dispel right out the top is this idea that you're going to save money over traditional three-tier architectures. At least in what sense save money? One of the things that, you need to really ask vendors right off the bat is the solution that they're selling a one-to-one or apples to apples replacement of the technologies you're using today in your data center. So could I replace my whole IT infrastructure with a HCI or with their HCI solution? Or is this a point use case? And once you ask that question, I think that will start to peel back a little bit more of the technical questions. One of the things that I found when doing the basic math is once you get to a certain scale, hyperconverge from a CapEx perspective starts to cost more than traditional three-tier architectures. And if you're not aiming to really, really go after OpEx savings, then it becomes a challenge to make that ROI on hyperconverged.
Okay, and so you're talking about at scale. So if I'm looking to uh, replace my entire infrastructure as the capacity grows, that's when you're saying that hyperconverged starts to lose its ability to meet that ROI.
Well, even if we go back to, and it depends on your overall data center operations at scale. Let's say that you are big enough that you have a storage admin. And I think the storage admin is the role that we really like to pick at when it comes to OpEx. When you look at hyperconverged and you no longer have that need to lay out lawns and have this huge spreadsheet and this overhead, this human overhead associated with managing your infrastructure, the hyperconverged is really appealing. However, how much of your infrastructure are you displacing with hyperconverged versus adding on? So let's say that I have a new project. Uh, it's a new VDI project. We love to use VDI as a great use case for hyperconverged. And you're just adding on to your infrastructure as opposed to replacing, some outdated monolithic storage array or some up-to-date monolithic storage array that is using up all of your OpEx budget. If you end up having both HCI in your monolithic storage array, where exactly is that savings? And I think that's the trap that a lot of CTOs need to be careful of. If you're not actually reducing headcount or doing some type of cost avoidance that you can quantify, I challenge the notion that you save money from a OpEx perspective with HCI.
Do you think that, I mean, it must be a touchy sale for a lot of the HCI guys because if the ROI really, in many cases, depends upon headcount, I could see where it could be a concern for IT professionals in the data center.
Yeah, so I think it is a touchy sell, but when I talk to most of the HCI vendors, it's not around specifically headcount and that type of cost. When you talk to ACI vendors, I think all of them across the board will agree to you that the value of HCI, the primary value is speed to value, or
Mm-hmm.
and being able to acquire a piece of data center equipment and implement that. So,
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about the pressures of cloud on in shadow IT on IT and the ability to come up with an ideal on the business side and execute, HCI reduces the risk when it comes to the ability to execute upon the IT vision. And I think that's where when you talk about savings and agility, where HCI has the true argument over traditional three-tier applications.
Okay, awesome. So, Keith, when a CTO is speaking to the competitive landscape, and he's now got in the back of his mind that um, it should be able to provide an ROI, and maybe that means scaling back headcount, maybe it doesn't, whatever that means. But is there maybe one or two other things you can think of that a CTO should be asking the vendor landscape as he does his due diligence?
We can look at it from the ground up, from the technology up. ACI isn't magic. You look back, a lot of HCI vendors like to compare their solutions to the iPhone. But if you look at the iPhone, especially the early days of the iPhone, I think we're still in the early days of HCI. The iPhone really wasn't a great anything. It wasn't a great phone,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a great camera, wasn't a great PDA. So HCI, I think, has those same technical hurdles that it has to overcome. I pick with the HCI vendors that, you know what, yeah, the term is kind of funny because you don't add networking to it. So my whole infrastructure isn't hyper converged.
Mm-hmm.
It's looking at specific pain points within your infrastructure. And
Mm-hmm.
this agility piece is something that I really want to harp on. If you're losing out to competitors, if you're losing out to uh, performance and uptime because you just can't keep up with your IT demand, because that legacy, even when you design a pre-engineered pod where you have, best of breed storage, best of breed networking and compute, and you have a pre-engineered solution, you bring it in house, it still takes time to ramp that up.
Mm-hmm.
Most hyper-converged solutions, you can order it, have it in, receive it, and have it up and running that same day, if not the next day. I think that's the true ability for cost savings, that time to implement, that engineering time. It still takes, an engineer 3 months in your environment to come up with that initial reference design for that architecture for when you deploy your pod style. You save 3 months of engineering time and 3 months of OpEx time required to engineer a solution. And I think that's where the savings for a pre-engineered solution such as HCI comes into play.
So it also sounds like, Keith, and maybe we're running short on time, so we'll finish up on this point, that when you are surveying the landscape of HCI partners, one of the things you want to look at, it sounds to me like, is the organization and the architecture standing behind it to, make sure that it's matching the specific needs that you're trying to accomplish.
Exactly, that's a great point. One of the things that you really want to key on, and this is beyond hyperconverged. We're just as CTOs, CIOs, we're asked to do more with less. We're asked to add all of these high end capabilities from a platform as a service perspective, serverless technologies. We're asked to hire really smart people to take care of I think, the true value add things from an infrastructure perspective. Solutions like HCI give us the head start in providing those solutions. No longer are we spending a lot of time doing that pre-engineering work. So when we talk to HCI vendors, it's important to understand their vision for those higher levels. How do they integrate with containers? How do they integrate with container management and orchestration? What's the vision and roadmap to those future-proof infrastructure technologies?
All right. All right. Well, Keith, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
David, I really appreciate you having me.
All right. So, hey, you have been advised today by the CTO Advisor. Follow him at CTO Advisor. Signing off, this is Dave Littman for Extreme NR. Thanks to Keith Townsend, again at CTO Advisor. Thanks again, everyone, and make it a great day.